All right, today we're going to be talking about the NRSVue Gift Bible. So I'm just going to share my thoughts on this. Just some basics of this, the features. It's double column format, which I'll show you. They have a presentation page, one satin ribbon marker, historic creeds, 3-year reading plan, exquisite durable leather soft cover, Smith's own binding lines that lie flat when open, and the exclusive Zondervan NRSVue Comfort Print typeface. Print size 8.5, a little bit tiny for me. 25 bucks American, 31 bucks Canadian. So let's jump into this new revised standard version update, and I'm going to share some notes that I have. So it feels pretty nice right out of the gate. It's got this little threading here, stitching if you will, so that's kind of nice. I'm not a big fan of the blue. It's okay. I like black. That's just me. But it's pretty nice. Got the ISBN number on the back. Lies flat like they said. That's pretty cool. Double column. Like I mentioned, it's an 8.5 font. So let's just go into here. So we have this. So they basically call this the NRSVue Gift Bible. So as always, I like to talk a little bit about the copyright. So up to 500 verses of the NRSV updated edition Bible text may be quoted or reprinted without express written permission of the publisher. Verses quoted either amount to a complete book of the Bible nor account for 50% or more of the written work. So you gotta write in and ask these guys for permission if you're reading this out loud or making this a part of your if you're preaching, all this kind of stuff. You need to give them you need to ask them for permission. So to the reader, so this is a little bit about why they created the NRSV. I'm not going to read the whole thing. Instead, what I'm going to do is I read this whole thing, and I'm going to share my notes based on that reading, just so you can get an idea of what this whole thing is about. So again, we're talking about the NRSV. If you like this kind of thing, if you like me reviewing and talking about various Bible versions, then let me know in the comments as well. So here we go. Here are my notes. So I like to ask when I start out, you know, where do modern versions of the Bible get their material from? Original manuscripts, etc. Which originals are we talking about? Which language? How old are they? All this kind of stuff. Do they use the King James Bible as the main resource? They don't mention that in the NRSVue, but it's clear that they are using the King James as the main resource because they have scripture references, chapters, everything like that. It's almost identical to the King James Bible. Same style. You could, if you didn't know it wasn't the King James Bible, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. All right. So they also want to use a philological understanding, and they used available manuscript evidence with textual analysis and philological understanding, which I meant. The idea is to create an inclusive version of the Bible. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more here. Free from gender bias inherent in the English language. So this is what they're trying to get rid of, is the gender bias. So masculine terms, if you will. So involving scores of scholars and leaders from multiple faith communities, inclusive of gender and ethnic identities. So, which is interesting, multiple faiths. I don't mind the idea of using male or female. Doesn't matter what their ethnic background is at all, but it's interesting that they put multiple faiths. All right, so we get, this is kind of how it's broken down, if you will. The National Council of the Churches of Christ in the USA, so it's abbreviated as NCC. So they commissioned the Society of Biblical Literature, the SBL, to take on this task. So the idea was to review and update the NRSV to be single-mindedly intended. They used 7 general editors and 56 book editors, with several of the general editors serving also as book editors. So it could be 5 out of the 7 for all we know. So if they have a book editor and he's editing a book, they can actually step in and say, you got to write it this way, and they could veto it. So the general editors are divided into 3 teams. So we have the Old Testament, which is the Hebrew Scriptures, the Apocrypha, which is the Deuterocanon, and then, of course, the New Testament. So the NCC appointed 2 members of its Bible Translation and Utilization Advisory Committee to serve as liaisons to the general editors. So they're on standby for the general editors. So if the general editors have any questions, they would talk to the advisory committee. All right, so this is how it works. So the book editors would submit to the general editors, and then the general editors would go over their material and make any changes. They're allowed to make any changes that the book editors made. And then when they were happy, they would turn in the accepted updates to the NCC. So there were, in this updated version, there were 12,000 substantive edits from the NRSV. So that's why they created an update. 20,000 total changes, which includes punctuation changes as well. But this is important to note that they're from the last version. They're basically 12,000 changes. So the NSRV is not a new translation. This is right from them. They're telling us that this is not a new translation. They didn't go through all the hard work that Tyndale and all these other people did. What's the other guy's name? Wycliffe. They didn't go through Martin Luther. They didn't go through all the hard work of actually translating. So instead, they just created an update. They took out words that they didn't feel reflected today's times, and then they added new words. So changes were made where the translation was awkward, unclear, or inaccurate. Again, this is from their words. So for the Old Testament, the team made use of some resources here. So the Biblia Hebraea Quinta, which I believe is the 5th edition. So they used that resource. And then also the Biblia Hebraea Stuttgartensia. They use that as a resource. So these are both editions of the Hebrew and Aramaic text as current as early in the Christian era and fixed by Jewish scholars, the Masoretes. And I'll talk about that a little bit in the 6th and 9th centuries. So really these the books here that they use as a resource were copies of the Lennox Codex, which is the oldest complete Bible in the world. And so this is a copy, it's a printed copy, and then what it has is it has notes in the columns. Masoretic notes, if you will, how to pronounce words, all this kind of stuff. So they use this as the main resource to help them come up with new words and all that kind of stuff for the NRSV. So both are editions, I mentioned that. Okay, so the vowel signs were added by the Masoretes and are accepted in the main, but where a more probable and convincing reading can be obtained by assuming different vowels, we adopted that reading. So if it didn't make sense to them what the Masoretes had put in the columns or in the footnotes, all this kind of stuff, because we have to give credit where credit is due. If we didn't have a group of the Masoretes making their notes on how to pronounce the Hebrew and all this kind of stuff, we would probably not have the Bible that we have today. So they would make little notes. This is what we think this word means, all this kind of stuff. So that was important. But the NRSV comes along and says, if we don't understand what that word is, we will assume a different vowel meaning, a different vowel different sound, and then we adopted that reading. But we're not going to put any notes so that you know the changes that we made. No notes are given in such cases because the vowel points are more recent and less reliably original than the consonants. So they're not going to let you know that they're updating the Masoretic notes, text, if you will. So in short, the text critical basis for the Old Testament is an improved Masoretic text. That's their goal, is to improve what the Masoretes had going for them. The notes, the margin headings, any updates, all this kind of stuff. They want to improve that and change it. And there's no way to go back and figure out what they originally said if you keep changing this stuff. Which was the goal of the New Revised Standard Version. This is their words. Authorized for all major Christian churches, Protestant, Anglican, Roman Catholic, which is interesting, and Eastern Orthodox. That's why they created this Bible. The Apocrypha, therefore, is not peripheral, but of equal import as a translation of the Old and New Testament. So they give it equal weight to the Old Testament and the New Testament. And for the New Testament, they used the Greek New Testament 5th Revised Edition, UBS. I believe that's United Bible Society, I believe. So they use that as a reference, not back to the original Greek or original Hebrew, but they use this as a reference. They use the Greek New Testament CBL edition, the Society of the Biblical Literature and Logos Bible Software. So that's also what they used. Right, and then they also, as a third resource, they use the Acts and the Catholic letters, the Novum Testamum Graecium Editor Critica Major. Oh man, that's pretty heavy. But Catholic letters are basically, the word Catholic means everyone. Letters, so they're talking about the Pauline epistles. I gotta make this quick because I'm gonna run out of space on my phone. But Catholic means everyone, and they're using the Pauline letters like Colossians, Corinthians, Thessalonians, all that kind of stuff. So that's what they mean by that. But it's from a Catholic perspective, if you will. And then the NRSVue took special care to use terms in ways that are historically or theologically anachronistic, meaning outdated. They want to get rid of some of the old archaic terms and words and all this. So, though as in every translation, an anachronism is unavoidable. Like you can't you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Sometimes you just can't avoid getting rid of some of the words. They tried, but they can't. NRSVue continues and improves the effort to eliminate masculine-oriented language when it can be done without altering passages that reflect historical situation of ancient patriarchal culture. So that's why they're doing this. In the vast majority of cases, however, inclusiveness has been attained by simple rephrasing or by introducing plural forms when this does not distort the meaning. So this is what their goal is. So that's it. So hopefully you get a nice little snapshot of what the NRSVue is. So let's just go quickly before I run out of space here. Let's go to Genesis. This is just an example. If they don't like words, I'll just toss in something new. Genesis chapter 1. In the beginning, God created... Oh, no, it doesn't say that. It says, when God began to create the heavens and the earth was complete chaos, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. In my Bible, it says, the Spirit of God hovered above the waters. So they change it to say wind of God. So that's what they do. They don't like a word, they change it. Too masculine for them, they'll change it instead of sticking with what the original meaning was. So there you go. If you like this kind of review, let me know in the comments. Let me know you learned something from this. Are you going to buy this Bible, the NRSV? What are your thoughts? And as always, if you've made it this far, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. It helps me understand what content you guys like as well. Thanks again, and I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.